Well, that's a simple question for TB because the current tools we use, the medications, the regime are antiquated. The vaccine is almost 90 years old. The drugs are 40, 50 years old. And as a result, we have a global epidemic of drug-resistant disease and an insufficient regimen to actually address the epidemic. So the future of TB actually is in the pipeline. There's been great progress made over the last decade in developing new drugs, diagnostics, and vaccines. Well, actually, there was a big lag time and much R&D on new vaccines, probably at the onset of the antibiotic era, and with the childhood vaccinations really being the principal targets for public health. And so it hasn't really been until the Gates Foundation really started investing in this area heavily and drawing awareness to these diseases of which a vaccine would be amenable to helping to stem the epidemic. So why? Complacency. Even though there's broad recognition that the BCG vaccine really only protects a very small subset of the population from various types of TB, but not the infectious type, the pulmonary TB, which is the one that's spread easily and in more than 9 million people and infecting 2 billion or 1 in 3 people in the world. Well, there's nothing that we do in vaccine development alone as a product development partnership. It's pivotal that industry come in once the technology and the innovation is advanced well enough that it starts to get into the clinic. But when you talk about doing large phase 2B trials, phase 3 trials, licensure and global access, PDPs really aren't in that space. It's going to take partnerships with industry. And we have partnerships with equipment companies, we have partnerships with health organizations who are combating the TB problem, like the mining industry in South Africa. We have partnerships with the major pharmaceutical companies. So all across the board, almost everything we do involves engagement with the private sector. Well, we've got a few candidates either in phase 2B, which is a pivotal trial in vaccines, or entering phase 2B. One trial is finished, results will be available end of this year, partnering with Oxford University and Emergent, which is a private sector company who's taking the lead on this vaccine. We're in discussions now with GSK on a pivotal 2B trial that will start later this year, early next year. And the science is promising, but you never know until you actually get there and test it. So the pipeline is quite advanced, and I think some of the leading candidates give us some hope, but we still have a lot to learn. And then there's early stage candidates that we're looking at now that also show some promise, and a whole lot in the middle. So I'm confident that in the next 10 to 12 years, we're going to see new TB vaccines, probably more than one, entering the market. The biggest challenge is getting these new tools, and by that I mean drugs, diagnostics, and vaccines on the market and available where they're most needed. We have one interesting paradigm with TB, which is somewhat different than malaria or AIDS, the other two big diseases, and that is that the majority of the disease burden is actually in the emerging economies, and in India and China and Russia. And so there's a market for these new tools, and that will significantly help in the uptake and dissemination of these interventions when they're ready, leaving the public funds for lower income countries that may not have the budgets to support the introduction of a new TB vaccine.